Tonight, Dr. Plague reads The Dump. Enjoy. I've worked as an ER tech for a long time, going on about 12 years now. People often ask me why I don't just go back to school or become a nurse or a phlebotomist or something. If I like the environment so much, why not advance? Well, A, that's a big commitment of time and money that I'm not really willing to put forth the effort for. And B, I actually kind of like what I do. It's just the right amount of responsibility, and you don't feel like just another cog in the wheel either. I know enough about medicine, and I've picked up enough information on my job to help people, to tell doctors and nurses what I know concisely, and generally feel like I'm a key player in the ER team. Also, probably a smaller C, the ER is where I get my best stories from. The ER is such a chaotic nexus within the hospital, and you never honestly know what's going to wander through the doors. It could be a 5-car pileup. Could be a couple of horny teens that got their braces stuck together. You just never know. I've talked to Wall Street big shots, prostitutes, doctors who are too ashamed to go to their own hospital ERs for treatment, and even a few inmates from the state prison, though the guards don't really like you lingering. My job is usually to take vitals, get samples, and ask questions, and I'm pretty good at it. So when the orders came to bring a woman down to X-ray, I hopped to it. The couple was young, probably in their late 20s. The woman looked worse for wear, but not too bad off. She had some cuts on her face, some more cuts and bruises on her hands, and she kept grabbing her stomach and wincing. I told the husband, the rings were a dead giveaway, that we were going to make a quick trip to radiology, and I made small talk with the wife on the way there. I asked what had brought her here today, and she told me meekly that it was stomach pains. When I asked if she'd eaten anything that didn't agree with her, she said about the last thing I would have expected to hear. About a pound of garbage, I guess. I looked dumbfounded as we wheeled her in, and Claire and Robert helped her get on the table. She moved like someone in immense pain, and as I followed the techs out of the room, Randall asked if she really had a belly full of garbage. I told him I had no clue, and that I guess that's what they were hoping to find out with this x-ray. He turned the machine on, and Claire went back in to reset the slides a few times as they took their pictures. As the images came on screen, Randall raised an eyebrow. Well, she'll have a bowel obstruction, that's for sure. But if she ate all that trash, I'm pretty sure that a lot of it wasn't meant to be digested. I blinked, astonished. She did indeed have a belly full of garbage, right down to half a black garbage bag. Her stomach was oddly distended, and she looked as though if she'd eaten any more garbage, she would have been in danger of rupturing. Randall said he would pass the x-ray along to Dr. Yolander, but it was likely that she'd be heading into surgery. As I took her back to her room, I couldn't help myself from asking how she had come to eat all that garbage. I don't remember, she said, and I believed her. I just woke up in the garbage dump. I took her back to her room and tried to go about my day, but the woman and her husband were never far from my mind. I just couldn't understand how someone could eat all that garbage and not realize it. As my day proceeded, I kept thinking about her and her garbage belly. As my shift came to an end, I saw that the pair was still in the ER. I clocked out and went to see if I could get some answers if they were willing to talk to me. I knocked on the door and they invited me in as I made my request. Sorry to trouble you, and not to pry, ma'am, but I've been wondering about your condition all day long, and it's really been giving me fits. If you don't mind, can I ask how it happened? As it turned out, they were both willing to talk, so I sat down and heard the whole story. I'd been having stomach cramps for a few days now. I hadn't been sleeping very well either, and my dreams had been kind of hectic. For the past week, every dream found me in a castle where people I didn't know would call me to a big banquet. I would eat and eat and eat and wake up with my mouth tasting terrible and my stomach rolling and heavy. I also began to suspect that I was going somewhere, sleepwalking in the middle of the night. On more than one occasion, my sheets were dirty, and I had found footprints leading from the unlocked front door to the bedroom 3 or 4 times. My, movements were becoming alarming as well. They were larger than usual, and they hurt when they came out. This was confusing since my appetite was at an all-time low. I barely ate anything, constantly feeling bloated and full, and after 9 days of this, I was ready to go to the hospital myself. That was before my husband woke up to find I was gone. She looked over at her husband, and he seemed hesitant at first to continue. Look, it wasn't that I suspected her of anything, okay? We've been married about 3 years, and I could tell that something was different. She wasn't eating, she was sleeping fitfully, and I thought maybe something was going on. It just so happened that she had kicked me that night, waking me up, you see, and I was still getting back to sleep when she suddenly got out of bed and went towards the kitchen. I expected that she wanted a drink, but when I heard the door open, I got up to see where she was going. Imagine my surprise when I find the back door open and my wife missing. I walked the neighborhood, looking for her, wondering why she had disappeared in the middle of the night, before I finally came back home, hoping she would come back. Had she left on her own, or had someone called her? Was she sleepwalking? I was worried, but I guess that my sleepiness got the best of me after a while. When I woke up suddenly on the couch, I found her snug in bed and thought maybe I'd been dreaming. When I saw the muddy trail going from the kitchen to the bedroom, though, I knew it had been no dream. She put a hand over his, and he clutched it worriedly. The two looked at each other for a minute, and suddenly I felt like I was intruding on this moment. These two were worried. Their marriage was relatively new, and it was clear that the husband also felt a little guilty about where his mind might have went when she was gone. Maybe he had suspected her of infidelity, and perhaps she had suspected his suspicion as well. Meanwhile, I was suffering the next day from some intense stomach pain. I hadn't eaten much the day before, nothing more than broth, so the idea that I was having stomach cramps from a cup of soup was pretty perplexing. I called out that day, telling my husband that I wasn't feeling well, and just laid in bed. I was racked with stomach cramps, and I slept really fitfully for most of the day. I think he sensed how sick I was, and when he got home, he tried to ply me with tea and soup that I just couldn't keep down. I felt like I wanted to vomit, but all my body could do was dry heave. It felt like something was stopping it from coming up, and I really wished I could just flush myself out and get rid of this pain. The husband picked back up then, running a tongue over his dry lips before he started. I was glad when she fell asleep that night, but I was still on high alert to see if she would leave. I lay in bed trying to get still, but not get too sleepy. I just kept watching her, waiting to see what she would do, and then when midnight rolled around, she did indeed slide from the bed and head for the kitchen. I let her get a little head start, coming out of bed as she got to the kitchen, and when I heard the back door open, I was off and running. She squeezed his hand then and looked back at me. That night, the dream was the most vivid yet. I had gone to the table, hearing the voices calling for me, but the table was bare. The plates were empty, and I was just so hungry that I scattered them off the table in a rage. I was starving, and these voices had called me in here for nothing. When I was done, I heard them calling me again. I remembered that maybe they had called me deeper into the place before, but I couldn't remember it clearly. I just went. I just ran, and the castle seemed to fly by around me. She had thrown garbage all over the place, scattered some papers off the counter, and I just kind of looked around at the carnage for a minute. Had the trash can maybe been turned over yesterday too? I didn't have more than a few seconds to take it all in, because the back door was open, and I could see one slipper-clad foot disappearing around the side of the house. Now, I ran track in high school, and I've tried to keep it up so that, I don't get what my friends call married weight. When I tell you that it was all I could do to keep up with her, I'm not joking. She was damn near running on 4 legs, eating up the ground as she made her way to the last place I would have ever imagined, the city dump. I can't explain it, she cut in. In my dream, the voices were calling me. The smells were wafting around my nose in an intoxicating cloud. I was so hungry that I couldn't stop myself. I was sprinting, running flat out. Something was egging me on as I tried to get to the food as quickly as I could. Suddenly, I was in a banquet hall, a table full of food piled high with the most delicious things. Joints of meat, bowls of stew, fresh salad with nuts and dressing, puddings and cakes, and everything I love to eat. I was drooling. I could almost feel it running down my face, and I ran towards those tables like someone possessed. I stopped for a few seconds when I saw what she was doing. It was the last place I would have ever expected. What the hell could she possibly want here? That's probably why she had such an opportunity to do what she did. I felt like I knew what was coming next, but I asked him to continue anyway. This had become a train wreck, a disaster, but my lizard brain needed to watch until the last car came to a stop. Because that's what you do, isn't it? We watch the accident until it finally stops, till it's too late for us to stop it, and then we pick up the pieces. She went to the nearest trash pile and she just started eating. As I ate in my dream, I could feel all those wonderful foods filling my mouth with their tastes. I devoured them. I was ravenous for more, and I just kept eating. I could feel people behind me in the dream, applauding me and cheering for me as they called for me to fill my belly. But one of them was different. My hair prickled as one of them called my name, trying to make me stop, and their applause changed to jeers as the one shade approached me. Their stories became a little jumbled as they kept cutting over each other, but I tried to listen as best I could. I called her name. I couldn't think of anything else to do, but she just kept devouring that slop. She would tear some of the bags open. Some of them she would just rip open with her teeth, and she was chewing up anything that went into her mouth. Rotten food, paper, glass, anything that went down, and she was eating like it was the last meal of her life. I ran towards her, shouting her name and calling for her to stop, but when I tried to put a hand on her, she turned and snarled at me, surprising me and making me step away. Whatever it was, it had touched me, and everything inside me roared to the surface to stop it. I was eating, I was filling my belly, and this creature was jealous of my good fortune. I turned and screeched at it, and for a moment it moved away. Then it grabbed me and pulled me away from the banquet, and I struggled and screamed, striking out with my arms and legs as I tried to fight it off. I was put off for a second, but then I grabbed her and tried to pull her away. She was going to hurt herself. I could already see cuts on her face and hands, and I didn't want her to puncture her esophagus or her stomach or something. I drug her away from the garbage pile, and that's when I saw the others. He spoke like someone who's realized that they're surrounded by a pack of wolves, and I just couldn't help myself. Others? It appeared it wasn't just my wife who'd come out to feed. There were dozens of them, these haggard shadows that lumbered amidst the trash. They hissed at me. They screamed at me like angry cats. And at that moment, I did something I had never done before. I looked at my wife, her eyes glazed over and her body fighting me with every fiber of her being, and I slapped her. I'm ashamed to say it, but I slapped her. She came awake shakily, disoriented, unsure where she was, and I just picked her up and booked it. The hissing people, those garbage people, they followed after us, but I didn't look back. I didn't even stop running until we were already inside the house with the door locked. I shook my head a little as he finished, but it was almost 9 when you were finally admitted. Why did it take you so long to get here? I didn't mean to sound judgy, but I guess I must have, because the husband bristled a little. Well, we had to wait for the goddamn garbage people to leave for one. She had covered his hand again, trying to get him to calm down a little before she continued. I don't remember anything before we got home. I came fully awake on the couch, my husband peeking through the windows as my stomach heaved and my body ached. I coughed up a piece of glass then, a long red shard that felt like it had cut my throat on the way out. And as I turned, I started crying. I asked him what was happening, and he started telling me about how he'd followed me to the dump. He told me about the garbage people, probably the ones who'd been calling me this whole time, and I just sat on the couch and tried to process it all. I I felt like I wanted to throw up again, but I couldn't bring anything up. I was scared and hurting, and I just wanted it all to end. I don't know why they wanted my wife so badly, but about 6 of them haunted our yard for the next couple hours. They skulked, making it impossible to get a good look at them. They looked ragged. Their hair was shaggy and their clothes were mostly cast-offs. If I'd seen them on the street, I'd have thought they were homeless. They never approached the house, but they did hide in the bushes, under our cars, and anywhere else they could lurk without being seen. I explained what I had seen to my wife, all the while trying to keep an eye on these people. When the sun started coming up, they finally fled, and after I was sure they were gone, I loaded her in the car and brought her here. The receptionist just wrote down stomach aches when I told her what we were going through, so it took several hours of waiting in the lobby before they could admit us. Even then, I don't think they considered us a priority until after that x-ray. I knew he was right, but before I could say so, the door was pushed open and 3 orderlies came in with a stretcher. They loaded her frantically, saying they needed to get an ultrasound immediately. Something had come up on the blood work, and they needed to make sure that everything was okay after that hastily given x-ray. When I asked the nurse in the hall what was going on, she said they had ordered the x-ray before discovering that the woman was pregnant. That's what's been bugging me since I left the hospital. The husband had seemed shocked by her pregnancy when they told him. She'd had ovarian cysts when she was younger. The doctor claimed that she'd never be able to become pregnant. I don't understand this, he said. He looked shell-shocked. Personally, I'm left with another concern. What sort of baby gives his mother a craving for garbage? Like I said, you just never know what you're gonna see come in the ER when you clock in. Good evening, my little creepy-ronies. It's me, Dr. Plague. Thank you so much for joining me for tonight's story. Oh, time to thank our patrons again. Thank you again to Leslie Lou Riddle for being our Spooky Skeleton tier contributor. Thanks, Leslie. We just couldn't do it without you. If you too would like to have your name read out at the end of every episode, swing by Patreon and become one of our contributors. For just $5 a month, you too can be one of our Spooky Skeleton contributors and have your name read out at the end of every episode. Until next time, Dr. Plague, signing off. Have a wonderful